Are you a coach or consultant looking to build new revenue streams to fund your lifestyle and give back? Well, this podcast is for you. We bring you inspirational guests and solo shows sharing actionable tips to solve many of the struggles you face each and every day. And now, over to your host, Paul Higgins.
Hello to the Build, Live, Give podcast. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. And if you enjoy it, please subscribe. If you're a regular, thanks for your support. Love to get your feedback at paul@buildlivegive.com. It means the world to me when you do. Our guest is someone who worked at a prestigious accounting firm and gained their chartered accountant's degree. They then went traveling and worked in the film industry. They give a great insight into their time there. 3 years ago, they left corporate and started working for an amazing bookkeeping company called Bean Ninjas. A shout out to Meryl Johnson, who supports myself and other members in our community. Our guest helps service-based businesses with deeply understanding their numbers to be more profitable in a sustainable way, something that is incredibly important at any time, but certainly now. So why listen? How Profit First works, what revenue and cost levers to pull to fund your lifestyle, how to build a team while paying yourself first. They give you some great resources called the Profit Kit during the interview as well. So now over to Michael Wark from Bean Ninjas. Welcome, Michael Wark from Bean Ninjas to the Build, Live, Give podcast. Great to have you on today, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Paul. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, look, you're a fantastic new member to our community, but I know you also give enormous value around the topic of profit first, which we'll dive into. But before we do that, why don't you tell us something that your family or friends would know about you that we may not?
I've played field hockey my whole life. Most people in the professional world probably don't know about that. But my whole family's played it and all my brothers and sisters. And I still play it to this day. We've had a shortened season because of what's happened this year, but I'm still playing this year. So 33 years later.
Brilliant. Well, I think if it's okay for me to say this, I think you're the second best hockey player in our community.
Yes, I know. We have a very established field hockey player in the group. Absolutely.
Correct. Our good friend Stuart Carruthers. So shout out to you, Stu. He always says that between he and his wife, there's 3 gold medals in the family. So I think that's how he goes. But he was part of Hockey Roos and played in the Olympics. So I know you're a very good hockey player, but maybe didn't have the time to commit to get to those levels. Is that how it worked?
No, look, that's a fantastic achievement, making the Olympics. And look, I probably didn't the commitment or the skill, but look, I made a lot of good friends doing it, and I learned a lot about teamwork and spent a lot of fond memories traveling around New South Wales. And actually, I played in South Africa, and when I moved to London and I moved to Amsterdam for a while, I played in the local comps over there. So it was a really good way to build friends and build a network overseas. So it's paid me back in many, many times.
Yeah, look, I think, that's a brilliant thing with sport. And I do find that field hockey is a little discriminatory, though, because I'm a naturally right-handed single and two-handed left. So that was just one sport I could never play with the back of the stick all the time. So anyway, I went to cricket instead. So look, I know you started at Ernst & Young. Is that right? Was that sort of your first formal accounting gig?
That was, straight out of uni. I was an auditor at Ernst & Young for just shy of 3 years.
Great. And then you sort of went into the film industry. So tell us, how did that eventuate?
That was over in London. So I finished up my chartered accountancy here in Sydney and went traveling for a while in South America and then landed in London with the view to get a job. I was open to all ideas and avenues. And so a job came up at a really prestigious film production company over there in the finance team. And so I jumped at it, and it was a great opportunity, and it was a fantastic team. And I got to go to all the big movie premieres of the films we released. And it was an exciting time to be in a foreign country and have these experiences. So it was great.
Great. And, obviously we see all the front end of the film industry and all the fame and the fortune that comes with that. But what's it like behind the scenes? From a money perspective, do they make the money that we see at the front end? Do they make the sort of money at the back end?
It's getting harder and harder as the years wear on. The tentpole films still turn a very healthy profit. Your Fast and Furiouses and your Jurassic Parks of the world and your Star Wars, they're still doing great business. But studios are taking less and less risks and they want more and more sure things. So it is hard. It's a very hard business and it's cutthroat. And if you're not performing or something doesn't perform, you have a flop, your stocks really rise and fall with your last performance or your last film that you were involved in. And for the staff, for the crew, I should say, they work really hard. It's 10-hour days minimum, usually 12. It's a really tough lifestyle, but it's also a great bunch of people and you have a lot of fun doing it as well. You get to go to some cool locations. There's pros and cons, I guess, but yeah, I really enjoyed it for my time.
Yeah, brilliant. And from there, you went into Bean Ninjas, is that right? Or was there some other jobs in between?
Yeah, so I worked on films as well. So I worked on Alien Covenant, worked on a big one called Gods of Egypt, another one called Unbroken, all here in Australia when I moved back. Then I moved to an Aussie TV production company or film production company called Matchbox Pictures. Yes. And then from there, I moved into Bean Ninjas, and I was kind of trying to escape that corporate world and then move into something where I had a bit more of a direct impact in the people I was helping. And that's why I wanted to move into the smaller business or the small to medium-sized business world and sink my teeth into this area.
Great. And I know we're going to dive into more in the build section of exactly what you do today, but I suppose you've got a Bean Ninjas, which you've been there for over 3 years now, so you've got their support, but you're also running a venture that's funded by them as well, or they're a direct investor in. So just tell us a little bit about how that structure's evolved.
Yeah, we've got an interesting podcast on this. Maybe we'll put a link in the show notes. It came about organically. I was happy at Bean Ninjas and working hard, but it was more to do with me trying to find where my place was and fitting in what I was good at or what brought me energy with where Bean Ninjas was going. And at that stage in Bean Ninjas, I was moving to like a team manager role where I was going to be overseeing a portfolio of our recurring bookkeeping clients. But that role didn't have as much hands-on contact with clients as probably what I wanted. And what I really enjoyed was speaking to people on the sales calls, hearing their problems, trying to help them solve them. So that's where over a period of months, we kind of renegotiated this new venture where I could have a bit of equity in the business as well. And also it gave me more access in a VCFO and a coaching role to try and help clients in a more active way, more hands-on. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Great. And for the change that you've just made, who have been some of the biggest supporters of you as you've gone through this recent change?
Probably firstly, Meryl, who I did all the negotiations with, and she's obviously the founder of Bean Ninjas. She was really open to the idea and wanted to find something that worked for both Bean Ninjas and myself. So that was probably the biggest one. And she's kind of been a mentor to me as well along the process as I try and build up this business and move more into the sales and marketing. As you know, I've joined the community with you, Paul. So she's helped me build those different skill sets that you don't need, because for a long period of my career, it was more just service delivery rather than the sales and marketing. So Meryl's been a great, and funnily enough, my old man, shout out to Harry, my dad, he's been really great. He's a doctor, but he reads the FinRev every day cover to cover, and he knows a lot about business just from his time on the earth. So he's been a great source of advice to me as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I know I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing unless it was for my dad. He had a beautiful olive grove that we picked for 4 days. And at the start of it, I said to Dad, I'm not happy in corporate. I need to go do something else, protect my health, etc. And at the end of that 4 days, I need a solution, or we need a solution. And yeah, he's pivotal in helping me make that change and supports me. And actually, the day of recording today is his 74th birthday. So I don't think my dad has ever listened to one of these, but Dad, if you are, happy birthday.
That's fantastic, Paul. That's nice to hear. It's my birthday tomorrow, actually. We share it's a good time of year to be born.
Yeah, well, it's my wife's, Linda. It's her 50th on Friday in Australia.
Wow.
26th. So it's great, but unfortunately due to some of the changes we've had here in Victoria, Australia, that now we can only have 5 guests, not 20. So I had a lovely party organised based on last Sunday, and then on Monday we had to pivot from that. So I'm assuming you can't have a big shindig either.
No, we're still under, those various restrictions at the moment, but I've got a small kind of outdoor gathering planned, nothing too crazy.
Excellent. Yes. We've got some wonderful neighbours around, but we've got a couple in particular that we cannot trust. Plus, we want to do the right thing, of course. There are lots of people listening, so I better be careful there. So look, we'll go into the build section because I've already talked a little bit about it. But when someone comes to you and says, hey, Michael, what do you do? How do you best describe that?
I help service-based businesses and agencies become more profitable and help them grow in a sustainable way. And there's a bunch of tools in the toolkit that can help them do that. I know you mentioned Profit First, which is Cashflow blueprint that helps people bring clarity and control over their finances. But we also do other things to help solve a range of problems. Some of the things I try and help people through is getting their house in order. So, setting up for growth or sale and bringing that external view to their accounting and bookkeeping. We look at some profitability questions about what their pricing or what their expenses are and their margins. And we also help people with managing their labor costs and working out the productivity there. And recently I've been really helping a lot of people with doing cash flow forecasting, which is a really hot topic because a lot of people are trying to map out their plan ahead in these uncertain times.
Yeah, and look, I've got a pretty simple view on profit or cash flow forecasting is if you have a retainer-based business and you get your money before you do the service, it helps with a lot of cash flow issues. So that's one of the solutions that I always recommend, and that's the business model we certainly use. What are some other key ways to help improve your cash flow?
Yeah, getting paid up front is 100% a fantastic way to avoid these things. But just being on top of your billing, depending on how you're getting your money from people, and if it's a bigger price, maybe setting up a payment plan for people or negotiating things like that, offering a range of ways for people to pay. So not just direct debit, but giving them a PayPal or a credit card option is another really handy way to do it. And just in the process of building out these forecasts with people, it actually just helps you plan ahead to see where those pinches might be. Perhaps you've got a couple of down sales months ahead with a big purchase kind of coming up as well, and you might need to reassess when you're going to make that purchase or push it out a little bit. So it actually helps with a lot of strategic decisions as well.
Yeah, and look, I must admit I've spent a lot of my time in sales and used to always have that healthy conversation where we'd be too optimistic and the accountants tended to be, too conservative, and we sort of met in the middle. And I do have to declare, Michael, that I did do accounting at university, so I'm a bit of a hidden accountant. I do know my numbers, but I am more optimistic. How do you handle that? Especially, we mainly help coaches and consultants, and I do hear people that often say, I'm going to be, what's your success look like for you in 12 months? I'm going to have $1 million in turnover. And I'm looking at their business model and saying that, look, I just don't think that that's possible. How do you go about bringing some realism to the numbers?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's been no salesperson in the world that their predictions haven't gone up and to the right at all times. I always find these big corporate companies doing weeks and weeks of budgeting, but it always looks good, right? No one ever predicts a loss. So bringing a bit of reality to the numbers involves getting a little bit more into the detail and seeing what the trend has been previously and then what the logical next steps are. So a common conversation I have is with people who are having these big goals ahead of these sales targets. I then ask the questions, well, what's it going to take to deliver on those sales? Do we have the staffing required or the trained staff required to deliver this record number of sales we're predicting in 3 months' time? And that starts to put it into a little bit of reality because you start to realize that perhaps this exponential growth isn't realistic and isn't productive for the business because it's going to put a lot of stress on the business if it actually does happen, because you're not going to be able to deliver a quality service with the number of staff you currently have. So I think starting in reality, but I do 100% love to entertain big, hairy, audacious goals, Paul. So we do something called scenario analysis, and we say, look, let's do our baseline, and in our baseline we'll be conservative and close to reality as possible, but we also plan for a best case and also a worst case. So you've got 3 different scenarios there in case of things taking off and in case of things take a dive. So we do talk through the great sales potential, but it's not the main cash flow forecast, if you know what I mean. So we still like to entertain those things because that's what motivates people, but we also have a backup.
One of the hardest things I've found when I was in corporate, we had resources. So if I wanted to go and put on new people, yes, there was always a budget, but if you had, a good justification, you could always find money, and money was then, sort of was saved in other areas, if that made sense.
Yeah,
especially if you had a good revenue strategy. But I know even myself as just running my own business, it's hard to know when to put on the cost versus when the revenue is going to come in. So if you do your marketing, you do your hiring of more people, like generally that's pre-revenue. What are some tips around how to manage those really difficult conversations?
Yeah, so in terms of when to bring on a staff member or when
or because someone will say, look, I'll do all these Facebook ads for you, or, I'll do all this LinkedIn stuff, but you normally got to pay for it before the return comes. There's normally a lag. What's the advice, the best ways to handle that lag?
I think having a healthy business before making the new risky investment is key. So having a net profit margin of 10% or above already. So you don't want to be limping into this new product launch and hoping that will save your business. You need to be running an effective business already. So you need to be coming from a position of strength from a cash flow perspective. And I would say don't commit to any long-term expenses with these new contracts or start to build any huge expensive products until you've tested it in the market. You've seen that people are willing to pay for it and you see the price that you're going to get for it. So I would say do testing rather than making big, bold moves, because a lot of people get excited about an idea and they want to think about the sales and marketing and how the landing page is going to look without really seeing nuts and bolts of people who are willing to exchange cash for it. So launching it incrementally and doing a beta launch possibly, and not giving the Facebook ads people a huge budget to go with initially, and just testing the market slowly. So you haven't thrown a whole bunch of cash at the wall that if it doesn't stick, you've lost straight away.
Yeah, and look, I was always taught that the top of the revenue, the profit and loss, the P&L, the top of the revenue is always more important than as you work down the tree, so to speak. So for most service-based businesses that you work with, what's the mix of opportunity between new clients versus gaining more revenue from existing?
I think over the past 6 months, everyone has been really focusing on existing clients. There still has been opportunities out there, but everyone's shoring up their current clients, because your customer cost of acquisition, it does cost you money to bring in new clients into the door, and it takes time to onboard them. So there's still a lot of costs associated with winning new work. So at the moment, I feel like for the past 6 months, the main focus has been on existing clients. But for those bold enough to still be advertising and putting themselves out there still seems to be a lot of opportunity.
And with existing, which I agree with you, has certainly been the case for me, what are some good strategies you've seen to gain more revenue out of existing clients?
At the moment, it's been more about maintaining the relationships. I haven't seen anyone in my orbit, at least, who's been aggressively upselling right now. It's more being there as a trusted partner through troubled times, with the ability potentially further down the line to upsell or cross-sell. For example, in the accounting world, the JobKeeper has been going crazy. So for us, we've been getting a lot of JobKeeper requests, and some accountants have been trying to charge to help people access this, whereas others are trying to absorb that cost and just help their current clients because they're their trusted advisor and they know that they're building loyalty with them. So, it depends on, there's many ways to skin a cat, and it's hard to know what's the correct one. So yeah, there's varying views on that, I guess.
And on a cost-based perspective, so as you said, labour is probably the biggest cost base in most service-based businesses, but there are other costs. What are some areas that you see people can make some good savings on their cost base?
So we've also been doing a lot of expense reviews over this period. The big one that we see a lot of people forget about is the subscriptions. So you set up a recurring direct debit subscription to a bunch of stuff and you forget about it, and it's just eating away at your cash flow on your credit card, and you've forgotten about it. So I'd say look at that, especially ones that perhaps only charge you annually, so you completely forget about it and there's a big hit each year. That's probably a big one. Labor is definitely a huge one for any service-based businesses, and getting people to work possibly 2 days a week or reducing their hours is big. And then there's only so far you can reduce your normal overheads. You can try and renegotiate your rent if you have that, and there's only so far you can go with that. So it's potentially about how you deliver your service or product in a more efficient way, and trying to find things like automation and all the things that you talk about on this podcast, Paul, trying to find those synergies where you're saving money through efficiencies.
Great. And I know that you've been part of our community now for a little bit, and I'll be talking a little bit more about the community in a moment. But, what have been your biggest learnings so far from coming in and positioning yourself and finding clients through LinkedIn?
It's been great just to build the discipline to be writing regularly, or to try and put out your thoughts in a clear way in a regular basis. That's been a huge gain for me. So there's also a great mix of people within the group. So I'm actually learning a lot reading everyone else's posts and seeing what their opinion on leadership and business is. So it's been a real eye-opening experience, to be honest, because it's got me a lot more active, which is why I joined. I needed that prompt to put myself out there a bit more. But I've also learned a hell of a lot as a result. So yeah, it's been good so far.
Excellent. I know you're only new in, but there's enormous upside. I've been fortunate. I think I had looked back through the numbers the other day, and I've had, 1 million views from May to December of last year. And, even last week, still getting, 29,000 views a post, which is then leading to great opportunities to gain clients. And when I said, existing is a focus at the moment, definitely still picking up some clients. And for you, you see a lot of people build teams. Any tips that you've seen from your perspective on some key things to help build a really good team?
I could probably speak from BNidge's experience. Yeah. And I think a lot of the work is done when you're hiring and finding the right person. So spending the time to make sure that they're the right cultural fit. And so we're a remote business. And so it's making sure that they're also self-driven and can take the ball and run with it. And then we put people through, because we're obviously, we're a bookkeeping and accounting business. We need people with technical skills. So we also put them through a whole bunch of tests to make sure that their technical skills are also good. So I guess it's got to be cultural alignment, but and they've also got to have internal motivation with the right technical skills. But for me, it's the cultural thing and the work ethic, because you can train the other things. That's really important. And I know, like from my perspective, hiring people who complement the existing skills, so hiring for the role needed, not just because they're a nice person, has been really useful because it all plugs into the bigger picture nicely.
I know you do, as you said before, do a lot of consulting to help people, find profitable ways to sustain their business, especially service-based businesses. And you do use one of your tools is this Profit First. So just give us a quick snapshot on Profit First. I'm sure a lot of you listening now have heard about it, but what's your view on what Profit First means?
It's basically a system to help people build their business up in a sustainable way that sets them up for long-term success. And that's by allocating the correct funds to the correct sections of their business. I feel like a lot of people who launch a business are really good at delivering that product or they're really good at the one thing, but they haven't considered all the other areas or the mechanics that a business has that they need to be thinking about. And so the way Profit First works, just a cliff notes, is that but basically it's a simple idea. And for every $100 you get into the business, say you've delivered a service, you need to set aside funds for your profit first, hence the name Profit First. So it's building in profitability to your business from the get-go. And then you're also setting aside funds to pay for your taxes, to pay yourself as the owner. And then what's left over is what the company has to spend on your operating expenses. So it's streamlining your business to make sure, A, you're meeting your commitments, both to the government and to yourself, and to put aside funds for profit. And then it's giving you a lean, mean mindset to only be able to use what's left over there, which makes you naturally spend less money on expenses. So it's about creating small plates with several different bank accounts to help you save easier. And it's removing the temptation of spending it all sitting in one big one. And it's actually building in profitability from the get-go, which a lot of businesses don't know until tax time. Most people toil away for 12 months and then their accountant will tell them at the end what the score was. So it gives them a lot more tangible, visual way to see how they're going, because it's all when they log into their banking, they see how they're going straight away. It's really visual and immediate.
Yeah, I think that's so. And the biggest one I find when I first talk to people and go through their numbers is they're just not paying themselves. And like you said, the profit for a rainy day, for investing back in the business, for having 3 months cash flow in the bank at any one time, those things also aren't there. So they look at the revenue number. Yeah, I'm doing, 20,000 in revenue. I'm like, okay, so what's falling out from that? And I think that certainly triggers, and especially triggers a lot of, for me, people that are doing jobs they could get someone to do for, $14, $20 an hour, where they're, their billable rates, maybe 100, 200, 300. I think they're some of the changes. Do you see that as also a way of increasing your profit by making sure that you allocating your time to the right areas?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I mean, and quite often the owner's pay or the owner's wage is going to be the most expensive in the business. So you're at quite an expensive cost. And so it can be really dangerous to try and manipulate what you're being paid and think that you're in bootstrap mode for too long, because it actually might actually be hiding an incorrect business model. You might have your prices set incorrectly. You might be having way too high expenses, but because you're hiding this lack of good structure by not paying yourself and the business still appears to be making a profit, it's not reality. And if you try and sell that business to an investor, they'd laugh at it because you've got all of the things wrong. So what Profit First does is help you put that into focus and balance it a lot more clearly. And then you start to have those conversations, as you said, saying, look, I'm in the wrong role here. I need to hire. The owner wears many hats to begin with, but then you need to hire to remove yourself from those certain areas of the business and only pay yourself for the role that you're performing rather than stripping the business of all the money that it possibly can give you.
Yeah, and it's a huge risk because, a lot of people put all their time and effort into an asset that they may not be able to sell. And if something happens to them, so like for me with my health, I set the model up that I could continue it, but let's say it stopped. I need to be pulling cash out of the business to put it into other assets that aren't reliant upon just you. So if that's you at the moment and you really haven't got a handle on your numbers, please, I'll give you some details in a moment where you can find Michael and he can give you some help. But before I go into the live section, I'd like to show you how to get 3 to 5 new clients a month on LinkedIn by spending 30 minutes a day. And if you don't know where to start, and have limited marketing funds. Any of that sound familiar, Michael?
It certainly does.
Yeah, I think it did when we first spoke. But you can go to blgclick.com and watch a pre-recorded free masterclass. You'll learn the 3 steps. 1, the secret formula 10 times your views and be an authority on LinkedIn. 2, the 7 killer elements to get 50 likes and 20 comments on every post. And 3, the scripts to get 80% response rates to your LinkedIn messages. Just go to blgclick.com and watch my free pre-recorded masterclass. And look, as we just spoke then, a lot of the activities can be done by a virtual assistant. So if you don't have one and you'd like to learn more, you can also go to buildlivegive.com/VA, and we've got some great resources there. So the next section's the live section, Michael. So what are some of the daily habits that make you successful?
So I went through a big learning curve going from corporate structured into remote work, so working for myself. And so there was a huge learning curve here about how to set yourself up for success in a day when you're self-driven. The ones that I've tried a whole bunch. I've written a bunch of books I'm sure you're aware of, but the ones that I have stuck for me is getting up and making my bed. I know that sounds weird, but I remember hearing a Marine talk about it, and that helps, gives me my first win. That's still stuck. I still drink big glass of water immediately when I get up, and getting moving each morning. So doing some exercise, even if it's light, really helped me set up the day for a win. Those are the main ones that I do consistently. And meditation I come and go from, especially when I'm more stressed or frazzled, I start to go back to it more. So that's still part of the toolkit, but probably not every day.
Excellent. And Ruby, your partner, she's listening to it right now because I'm going to send her a copy even if you don't. So what would you like to say to her about the support she's given you?
Look, I'd just say thanks, Ruby, for being there for me. And, thanks for helping me become a better person. And I make you become a better person every day.
Excellent. Beautifully said. So the next section's the give section. So tell us about a community or a charity that you're passionate about and why.
So I do a little bit of pro bono work for a charity called Testigo in Africa. And that's run by a lovely woman named Tracy. And it helps Indigenous communities in Tanzania, and it teaches them permaculture and how to grow a sustainable life over there. And so I've been lucky enough to help them out with some pro bono work, using my financial skills. And so I'm looking to keep serving them into the future and trying to help do good things over there.
Great. And we'll put the name in the show notes, but it's TESTIGO Africa.
.org. Yep.
.org, yes. So we'll put the link in the show notes. And I also have a book called Build, Live, Give, and all my proceeds go to the Purple House. So purplehouse.org.au to find out more. So the last section's the rapid fire questions. So I'll ask you a couple of questions and get rapid fire responses. So the first one is, what are your top 3 personal effectiveness tips?
Get up early. Everything's easier when you get cracking early on it. Schedule everything in your day for your work day, obviously, not for your weekends. So if it's not in the diary, it probably won't get done. And use a team. As you said with the VAs, build around your weaknesses. Be aware of what your strengths are and build around them to try and create a real strong team.
And what's an essential piece of tech that you use to run your business?
Slack a hell of a lot, but the Google suite is what I live on. So Gmail and calendars and stuff like that. That's probably the big main one we use. And at Beanish, we also use something called Wark for our project management.
Great. And I'm sure you use a little bit of Xero as well in there.
Yes, we are the bookkeeping partner of the year last year, Paul. Subtle plug. I feel like we rabbit on about Xero way too much, but of course, we're Xero specialists. That's what we do.
Yeah, brilliant. And what's the best source of new ideas for you?
A variety of places. The news, I try and read the FinRev for what's going on in like the business world. I've been learning a hell of a lot just being part of the community, Paul, and reading about what's happening on LinkedIn as well. But I also like to read hardback novels, to try and get away from screens a little bit. So that's also a nice source of new ideas for me.
Great. And big shout out to Harry as well. I know gives you plenty of ideas as well from before.
Yes.
Now, the last question is the big one. I always leave it to the end for that reason. But what impact do you want to leave on the world?
I think if you make a small dent and make a small impact in a few people's lives, that's a win, So all I'm doing is looking to help small businesses grow and make a positive impact in their own local communities. And hopefully that umbrella's out. I believe in the butterfly effect, that small impacts to a lot of people will help spread that and they'll pass it down and down. So yeah, I just want to help the smaller businesses really make a positive impact in their community.
Brilliant. Well, look, as I mentioned during the interview, that if you really don't know your finances well and it's something you've been hiding, COVID has really shone the light on everyone at the moment. So it doesn't matter what you do, but if you're in particular a coach and consultant, you've been hit in some shape or form, and it's really good to know your numbers so that you can have a clear strategy moving forward. So I would highly recommend talking to Michael. And you can see him on his LinkedIn. You can also see the great posts and the content that he's been putting out with the help of our community. And also he's given some resources as well. So some books, some cheat sheets, and some other great resources. Just go to beanninjas.com/profit kit. And once again, we'll put the links in the show notes. But Michael, it's fantastic having you in the community. You're a giver by heart. And you're also doing something which I think is really important to help other people contribute to the world, because if they know their numbers and they feel safe and they can invest in their business and their business is to help others, that butterfly effect happens. So Michael, great to have you on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Have a great day. Bye.
Cheers, bye.
I really enjoyed that interview with Michael. He's got such a laid-back approach, but he is brilliant when it comes to numbers. He's certainly helped me, and he's helping other people in our community. You can get the show notes at buildlivegive.com. I'd love to know, what is your biggest takeaway from Michael? Please share it on your socials and mention Michael. If you believe someone you know would benefit from the show, please share. You can learn the 3 steps to find and convert your ideal clients on LinkedIn in our free pre-recorded masterclass. Just go to blgclick.com. Please take action to build your business and lifestyle and stay well.
Thank you for listening to the Build, Live, Give podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. It would mean the world to us.